Hi, I'm Representative Kim Fawcett, and welcome to Fairfield Our Town. Our Town is a new public access television show and an opportunity for you to get to know our leaders of our town a little bit better. I realized about 6 years ago when I started this work that we have some really amazing leaders in our town. Not just our elected and appointed public officials, but also all of those people who are volunteers and work for our nonprofits. Working so hard to really, all of them together, add to the richness of our community and really highlight the amazing leadership talent that's in Fairfield. And so I'm hoping in 2012 you will tune in to Our Town and get to know some of these people a little better. Today, my very first guest for my very first show is our new first selectman, Mike Tetreau. I'm so honored to have him and thrilled because he's not just our great first selectman, but a friend. And Mike, I thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invite.
So as I said, this is a new show and an opportunity really for just dialogue about getting to know you, because I really truly want people to get to know the leaders of our town in a little different light, not through controversy and politics per se, which is what you will be involved in as the budget season rolls out, but just who you are and where you come from. So no tough questions during this interview. So I know you grew up in Fairfield, but talk a little bit about what community you lived in and where was your turf?
Simply put, I grew up in the university area.
Oh, okay.
In fact, as a kid, I used to go up to the university and play up there with my friends. We'd have football games and all sorts of stuff on the fields and the big lawns that were available up there. But I went to Holland Hill School, so that's just down from the university.
Yep.
Then Tomlinson and then Ludlow. It was kind of interesting growing up because my dad was a teacher and
Right.
a football coach in town. And when we first moved to town, he coached at Roger Ludlow High School. But when they opened up Andrew Ward High School, when they opened up the second high school, he moved over there.
Okay.
And so one of the interesting aspects of my high school career was actually playing quarterback for the Roger Ludlow Flying Tigers when my dad was coaching the Ward Crimson Eagles.
Yeah, I can only imagine the intensity between the two schools. What was it like here in town? That was, gosh, kind of a while ago, right? The 1960s, maybe, when you were growing up?
You're cruel.
Is
You're cruel. But yes, it was.
the town different?
Yes, it was. Much different. It's interesting, though, when you think of the population, we had about 55,000 people then. We have about 59,000 now.
Oh, interesting.
So a lot of what's happened at Fairfield is a change in diversity, in mix, in amenities, in development, but not necessarily in population.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
So we were very much a small town. There were a lot more vacant lots. You played with your friends, on the streets, on the cul-de-sacs, in the vacant lots. It definitely had a small town feel. There really wasn't, even growing up here, you didn't think like there was much to do.
Yeah.
There was the old Howard Johnson's restaurant. There was the Center Restaurant. There was the Angus Steakhouse. And not much else to have fun. The community theater, where I had my first date, was in full operation.
That was the movie theater in town,
was it.
right?
That was it. And because of that, we actually went out on dates to other towns a lot more often than we did in Fairfield.
Which you and I have discussed, that we think that in some ways maybe Fairfield has become the it spot and stolen the spotlight from Westport in the past 5 years.
Oh, there's no question that we're now a destination community. When you think about it, with all the outdoor dining, there's a certain energy, a buzz. If you walk through downtown Fairfield on a Saturday night, you can literally feel it.
Yeah.
You look at the arts and culture options we have, all the entertainment, the shopping, the stores. Fairfield is where people come. And I still remember back just a few weeks ago, I was having dinner, and the couple next to us had come down from Reading to have dinner at one of our restaurants.
Wow.
And was heading over to the Fairfield Theater Company for the show following dinner. And they said they do that multiple times. They love Fairfield. And I hear that time and again.
And it's really special for our downtown, but also our local economy benefits as well.
No question. We've been kind of an oasis here. And that's why you see our vacancy rate is so high. You find how quickly, even with something like Borders, where they went out of business because of their nationwide chain problems. But less than 2 months later, we have Fairfield Youth Bookstore announcing they're moving into that space, and the downtown didn't skip a beat.
And I'm so thankful that Fairfield U sort of filled that vacuum, because I think we would have felt it. We would have felt the void if that didn't fill right away. And it really was like a blip in the radar.
No question. In fact, I've talked to both university presidents about working together to develop a strategic plan that includes the town and the universities in both of our strategic plans. The idea is that we shouldn't have Fairfield University Bookstore moving into downtown just because borders went out. There should be a plan on getting us together. We've got 1 million square feet to build out at the train station. We should be selling the fact that Fairfield doesn't just have a university here, but it has a university that's skilled and is a state-of-the-art leader in these departments. And that should be a reason for a business to move here, both to use the university resources, but in addition, that the university gets to have that business here and it develops a much closer partnership, much like Research Triangle does in
I
North
was
Carolina.
just thinking that, yeah, no, absolutely. That was sort of, the concept is about finding what your strengths are and identifying those strengths as a community and leveraging them. And that's exactly what we did with the Research Triangle, or trying to do with Research Triangle. But you're right, I think if you have that vision or that ability to leverage what our strengths are here in Fairfield, we can really do some pretty exciting things.
Absolutely. They know where they're going. So the issue is, let's get on the same page. Let's leverage both our strengths.
Yeah.
That gives the town something else to sell along with that. It also says we're moving in the same direction. It's not a reactive approach. It's a proactive approach to get us down the same road.
I definitely agree, but I'm not letting you off the hook on the personal questions, so I'm going to loop back around. And I know after you grew up here, you left for a little while, about 15 years?
Just about.
And talk a little bit about where did you go when you left? I know you went to college, but then you had a pretty neat, interesting career.
Yeah. After graduating college and having a chance to work for a Big 8 consulting firm in New York.
Which one?
Arthur Anderson.
Oh, okay.
The folks that have become Accenture now, they're still around in that regard. Also went to work for a small software company up in Boston that sent me over to Europe to set up the sales operations.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, it was project management software. So I had a chance to consult on major projects with people that, it's a way to manage time, cost, and resources and get things done on time and on budget. So that's a skill set that's been invaluable since then.
Yeah.
In addition, coming back, hooked up with an old college friend who was in fact buying a company out in San Diego and needed some help in running it. So I moved out to San Diego, California.
All right, so you lived first in what part of Europe did you live in?
I lived in Geneva, Switzerland.
Oh my goodness. So a little bit of time in Switzerland, and then you go out to...
San Diego.
Wow.
Big change.
Big change.
San Diego's got an unbelievable climate. I learned to scuba dive out there. So that was one of the skills that I've kept with me since.
And now you can scuba dive in the beautiful Long Island Sound.
Not quite. Caribbean still is nice.
Yeah.
However, in running that company, what we found is computer technology we used to be more productive and to be our competitive advantage in the marketplace. So since that point, computers have been a big part, or technology has been a big part of how I look at improving operations and taking advantage of the tools that we have to make people more productive, not just to work harder, but to work smarter.
And I am just thinking about all your experiences out in the private sector when you were away from Fairfield, and they must have prepared you for this job as first selectman. I know I saw it just right when you came into office, and there was the horrible storm, and you were able to sort of apply some of your project management skills to managing the storm, but also the train station, and how you embraced troubles with the train station project and sort of applied again those project management skills. And I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on that, if you felt like those experiences have applied to those circumstances or other circumstances you faced in the job.
Oh, there's no question. I think that if I look at the train station, first of all, my degree's in civil engineering, so there's a little bit of big construction background in that.
There you were ready for the train issue.
The project management piece helped me understand what we needed. The project manager piece also let me know that we needed a project manager on that, so we brought in a construction manager right away to do that. We knew we needed to put together a budget. We knew we needed to manage to that. We knew we needed to have the weekly meetings to keep us on track and make sure it was an all hands on deck. This is our focus. We've got to get this done. And identifying all the different pieces that had to happen in order to make that come through, to make it come through on time and on budget. We certainly had to identify how much we were over budget.
Right.
But once we got the revised budget in, the focus was, let's make sure we hit that number, and we're doing everything possible we can and using all the resources we can. A little bit different mix in the storm in terms of, as we're prepping for that, it always helps to have a plan. But fortunately, when you look at our public service folks and our emergency management team, They do a phenomenal job. They have the plan all laid out. So
because they've thought about it in advance.
Very
right?
definitely. And so the key there is a little bit different. Then it's just executing the plan. It was a pleasure, really, and an education, watching how well they work together. Police, fire, DPW, our health department, the CERT team, all the different volunteers that came together to make sure that everything happened. I mean, when you look at the shelter being opened up at Fairfield Our Town High School, and I went over to visit and realized that we had 70 or 80 people in there. What was amazing is we also had 30 pets in there. Yeah. And that was all laid out and planned, and it just went off without a hitch, and it was great to see.
Yeah, no, there's a huge testament to how much work that our town leaders across the board put into planning. And you don't appreciate it until you see it in action. And that week after the storm, it felt like they were humming. They knew what to do and where to go. But
yeah. They did a great job, and it really restores your confidence or builds your confidence in the quality of people we have in different departments of town, just doing a great job to take care of the residents.
Yeah. So you're out in California. I know you spent some time in Virginia as well, and you've had some of these great jobs. So why come back to Fairfield? What sort of brought you back here? Because you clearly had a very successful career and possibly could have had a more financially successful career if you didn't come back here. So I've always wondered, what brought you back?
It was really a conversation with my dad. And we were talking on the phone actually, interesting enough, right after I came back from a scuba trip, and I was telling him all the great fun I had. And he said, it would have been great if you'd ever come back and gotten involved in business with me back here. As much as my dad was a teacher, he'd gotten involved in real estate once he retired from teaching. And I was listening to him. I said, my dad was 72 when we had that conversation. I said, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? And from my standpoint, one of the good things or bad things about my business career, I spent a lot of time hopping on jet planes, running from one place to another. So coming back to Fairfield was a chance to go into business with my dad in real estate, but also get settled for a bit and get more involved in the community. So I was able to do things like get involved in town planning and zoning, getting involved in elected office on the RTM or Board of Finance, get involved in volunteering for the Red Cross. I started out as a CPR instructor for the Red Cross and worked my way up through being a board member and eventually chairman of the board for the Red Cross.
You're right.
So that type of thing, which made me feel much more a part of the community that I lived in.
Right. And now I'm just wondering, how many cities did you live in? You lived in Geneva, you lived in San Diego, you picked two great places. I know you lived in Virginia.
Roanoke,
Virginia, okay.
Right. And then in New York City for a little while right out of school.
Wow, so it's sort of man of the world. And I'm just wondering, did you speak any languages when you went to Geneva, or only English?
Bien sûr, madame.
Oh, you do? You speak French?
Bien sûr.
Excellent.
See, what happened is I grew up in Maine,
Okay.
or I was born in Maine. My dad grew up in Maine,
Okay.
and we moved here when I was 18 months old.
Okay.
But my cousins who stayed in Maine all learned French before they learned English. So when we'd go back to Maine, my dad would speak to my grandparents in French.
Okay.
All right, and my cousins in French.
And could you always understand them, or
Not as much.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. I did take French here in high school, and that really served as a base when I got over to Europe. And living in Geneva, I actually did start to speak more French, and amazingly started to think in French. Which was just magic when it happened.
Yeah.
and I thought back to my high school teacher, Miss Shiner, how proud she would have been if she knew that I was actually thinking in French at some point.
There you go, Miss Shiner.
All her lessons had paid off.
Yes. And did you take French through college too?
No.
No. So you had to sort of just work off of the foundation from high school.
Yep, had to catch back up with it. But it's kind of that immersion approach when you're in there and everybody else around you speaking French, how much you learn and how fast.
Yeah. So you come back mostly because your dad sort of lured you back, and that's a great thing. We thank you, Mr. Tetreau. But so you come back, and to switch to a career in real estate, was that hard, going from the jet set life and more challenging private sector into real estate, or was that equally as challenging?
Different type of challenge. I think that to begin in real estate, you have to like people, and you have to be very flexible because things come at you all the time, all hours of the day. A little bit like being first selectman. And that was just wonderful because you're basically helping people throughout that whole process.
Yeah.
It's less about selling houses than you are helping people in transitions. They're moving up, they're moving down, they are going through a transition in life, and they need somebody to help them through that. And so you get very conscious of the needs of people and what's important to them, and make sure you're a better listener and you're addressing their needs, not so much what you want. My favorite question was always, so Mike, would you buy this house? And my answer was always, no, I have a house. What's important is it the right house for you and your family?
And your family, right. Yeah, no, and I had an amazing realtor because, you know, I relocated here now, gosh, going on almost 14 years ago.
Okay.
And it was a big job to sort of take my husband and I and our babies around town and help us figure out where we were going to live. And especially difficult for people coming into town when you don't know all the different communities that Fairfield offers, and you don't know the different schools, and it's a lot to take in.
And see, that's one of the good things in terms of providing a background for real estate, because what it does is in real estate you deal with the entire population, the entire demographic group in Fairfield. So as much as you're dealing with folks in multi-million-dollar houses that are weathering this economy in pretty good shape, you're also dealing with folks at the lower end, in the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 house, that are having a tough time. They may have gotten laid off. They may be having to sell on a short sale. So from a First Selectman standpoint, you realize there's no one stereotypical Fairfielder, that we've got a very diverse population, more so than most people think.
And I know I have realized that through just being out campaigning, and you see the diversity of our town. And I just think it's interesting that you point that out, because it definitely helps you empathize as First Selectman and understand the different needs of different people in our community.
Well, importantly, what you want to do is avoid the typical government solution, if you will, one size fits all. And you realize that especially here with so many different people, with so many different needs, it can't be just one size fits all. You've got to look at how you address the different segments of our population. So
you've been involved in a lot of different aspects of the community. You mentioned the volunteer boards you were on. I know you were very active with Pop Warner. Talk a little bit about Pop Warner.
Absolutely, love it.
One of your favorite
for about 7 years. My brother got involved first, and he kind of brought me into it, and then we got my dad involved. So the three of us were actually coaching the same group of 10-year-old football players for a stretch there. And it was absolutely fabulous time to get together every day on the football field, doing something you love, with my dad, who was the consummate coach, is in the State Coaches Hall of Fame, coached at Roger Ludlow High School, then Andrew Ward, and then was originally involved in helping set up the Pop Warner program and helping come down and slot people at different positions. My brother actually went up through the Pop Warner program, so he got to play as a young kid.
Okay, and you too? Were you?
No, I didn't. The Pop Warner program came in just after I was gone through that age group. So I was pretty much in high school when it started to kick in full speed here. But it was great to get back and bring the Pop Warner program back to life.
And talk a little bit about that, because if I remember correctly, the Pop Warner program was really struggling. And you all had some sort of vision for reinvigorating it, right?
Well, we came back in, and the whole idea was to get people involved. So what you find is that the more kids you get involved, and we did that by publicizing the program, focusing on the schools, getting back out, letting people know that it existed. So as we got more kids involved, more parents got involved. As we got more parents involved, we've got more volunteers, more help, so we could do more things. And our focus all along was to provide a safe program where kids had fun and they learned football. And you find if you do those three things and get all the kids out that should be out and want to be out, that the winning takes care of itself.
The winning's just like icing.
Kind of a byproduct. Because if you get more kids out, you get better athletes out. So it all worked, but we focused on the fun and the safety part, and to make sure it was a real positive experience. And we looked around at some of the programs in town. Certainly some of the Wakeman Boys Club and Girls Club athletic programs in town in terms of everything they do and how well they do it. So, we want to model after that. And Fairfield's fortunate to have so many volunteers. When you look at the soccer programs, the Little League programs, the lacrosse programs, certainly places like Wakeman, that's a lot of opportunities for kids, certainly much more so than when I was growing up here.
Yeah, it's one of those differences that we could have mentioned earlier in our conversation. And so besides the Pop Warner, which I know I've talked to many parents who have been Pop Warner parents, and when you all were coaching, you and your brothers, and they say extraordinary things. I think people, as much as you enjoyed it, I think people in the community also very much enjoyed the time you gave there. You also got involved with the Red Cross, and I'm just quickly wondering why the Red Cross and how, what happened there? What kind of work did you do there? Because you were the chairman of the board for a couple years, weren't you?
Yes. Interestingly enough, I just moved back to town. I was at a Kiwanis luncheon, and the executive director of the Red Red Cross came out, and he talked about all these warm and fuzzy goals about making the community safer and all this kind of stuff that you hear a lot. But then he said, and here's how we go back and measure it. And I'm kind of a measurement kind of guy. So I'm like, that made sense to me. And one of the things they talked about is measuring the number of CPR students they have and how many certifications they turn out. Well, being a former scuba instructor, I was certified in CPR, and I looked around at my friends in the Kiwanis Club and said, hey, I can help with that. I volunteered to teach all you guys CPR. So I had to get certified by the Red Cross to do it within their program. We hooked up with the Red Cross, and we got 80 out of 100 members certified in that. Because of that, and I started talking about how we market this and how we get it out more and how we let the community know, they kind of invited me to join the board of directors at one point. And kind of as part of participating in that, I got to serve on a building committee when we got our new headquarters, and I was chair of the building committee in terms of the renovation project that we went
For
through.
the Red Cross?
For the Red Cross, which helps understanding some of our school building committees and what takes place there.
Yeah.
And at some point was nominated and was elected to be chair of the Red Cross there, and had a great experience there in terms of, that's the Greater Bridgeport Red Cross.
Yeah.
So it basically, wasn't just Fairfield, but it was looking at what happens in the surrounding communities. Yeah. And as chair, getting to go to some of the regional conferences and see what other chapters do.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Phenomenal education.
Yeah, really, really neat. And anecdotally, we'll have to talk offline because there's actually legislation proposed in the 2012 General Assembly about training for kids for CPR.
Oh, yes, please.
And figuring out how to interrelate that training into public school education.
You know, I always thought that more life training would be great within the school system. One of the things you learn in scuba diving, because you're going to kind of third world countries to dive in all these exciting places, you're on your own. So you get trained in CPR, you get trained in first aid, because you're responsible for you and your team and your group that's diving.
Right.
How great it would be to have our students know the same thing and walk out of high school with the ability to save a life through CPR, to know what the first steps in first aid are. I think that would be phenomenal, even if it's nothing more than call 911.
Right. Well, I'll keep you updated on the progress of the bill. Quickly, let's talk a little bit about your elected offices, because you've been on the RTM,
yes.
right? The Board of Finance,
yes.
and now the Board of Selectmen as first Selectman. So you have really run the gambit of elected offices here in town.
Yeah, and previous to that, also served on the Town Planning and Zoning Commission.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah. So that was my first elected office.
Okay.
And that's kind of where that I got shanghaied into running for that back in right after I got to town, and then proceeded on to the RTM.
Okay.
Which was definitely a way to get indoctrinated in how the town works. The Board of Finance, because you kind of want to move upstream a bit, and thought I could make a difference there. And I think during the time I was on the Board of Finance with a great group of people that I served on the Board of Finance with, I think we did change the budget process, how we looked at things, and help make the town financially stronger.
Yeah, no, I remember talking about some of the planning that you brought to the Board of Finance, and that's obviously been very helpful for the town. So now you're our first selectman. I guess you've had a pretty busy first 3 or 6 months.
Very definitely.
What have been the biggest challenges?
Wow. It's I think 2 things if I had to pick. One was just, you look at the magnitude of the Metro Center project and just getting that done right from the start. It was great to see the way everybody pulled together to do that. But getting our arms around that, finding out exactly how much work was left to be done, and getting that done, and getting the extra funding out of the state to do that. None of those were easy in that regard. Yeah. The second thing is realizing that we can do such a better job from a standpoint of communication with our citizens. And I think we've made some solid steps in that direction. But I think if you want to talk about open and transparent government, it starts with communication. Yeah. People need to know what's going on. They need to know why it's going on. I talk about management by rumor that happens too often, which is if I don't understand everything that's going on, I can make up my own explanation for why it is, or assume some things about it. But those may not be correct. So the key is to get the facts out to people. We still may disagree, but let's disagree over the same set of facts.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because I remember when we did you did all those reverse 911s during the aftermath of the storm, and people were complaining to me that they didn't have power and they didn't have phones. And the reverse 911 system mostly works with home phones, and it really brought to the forefront that we need to make sure we're collecting cell phone numbers as a way to sort of expand the ability to communicate. So I know there's an effort on the Fairfield Police Department's behalf, to get those numbers collected and be ready for the next storm.
No question. When you think about it, you go back 15 years, the internet was barely in existence. Now we have to start thinking, what is life like before the internet? What do we do when there is no internet? Without power, there is no internet.
It's really miserable.
And we went very, very old school in that we moved a police truck or van out to one of the sites on Black Rock Turnpike, so we could basically move information and sources closer to the people, so they could drive by and stop in and get information.
Yep, I remember.
And one of our plans is, if we get in that situation again, to have several of those sites around town and to let people know where they go for information if they're out of power.
That's great. Well, I know we've got to wrap up our show, and thank you so much for being my first guest. I'm wondering if you could share a few thoughts about your sort of vision for the next 3 years as first selectman. You've got 3 years, no election or campaigning in your future. What kinds of things do you want to bring to our town?
Oh, I think there are a number of them, but let me take 2 or 3 to start. One is that we want to continue to build on our strengths. One is our AAA credit rating. We want to continue to solidify our solid financial foundation. We've got a couple moves in this budget to get us in that direction. We want to build up our surplus, address our internal service fund issues, and shore up, cut down on some of our bonding that we've been doing. I think second, we want to continue to build on our strength in downtown, the vibrancy, the Arts and Culture Center. So I'm looking at setting up an arts commission to kind of build on what's taking place there and take it the next step, look at what else we can do. This year we're hoping to have a restaurant week kick off in the fall. We then want to turn around and build that into kind of a Fairfield Day celebration the year after. And the year after that, get together with the entire community and celebrate our 375th birthday.
Wow, that's a great plan, and that's a great place to end a first show. And thanks again for being a guest. I hope you'll come back sometime later in 2012 and give us an update.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Nice to see you.